We got word from Colombia that they had been tracking this guy, Denny Munoz Mosquera, also known as Quica, that he had escaped from several prisons down in Colombia. He was part of the Medellin Cartel.
Not only was he working for Pablo Escobar, he was one of Pablo's main sicarios.
Correct. I just remember getting him fingerprinted and being there when we arrested him for the bombing of the plane and the indictment later on that came. And you could just look into the guy's eyes and there was nothing there. It was just black. You just look right into the soul and it's like looking into the devil. It was bad. I actually got the chills, when I was fingerprinting. I was like, this guy's a bad dude.
Yeah, I came across one statement that he committed his first murder at 12 years old. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the next episode of Game of Crimes with Murph in the Morning. You see, I got a big smile on my face today. That's because I'm with an old friend here. I can't believe I've finally got him on the show. I've been talking to him for 4 years now about coming on the show, and I finally trapped him. I tricked him.
Yeah, you did.
But we had a hard time hitting the record button because we started reminiscing and telling more stories. I thought, well, crap, let's just wait and tell this while we're doing the recording here. So, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming an old friend here, retired DEA agent, special agent, Sam Trotman. Sam, welcome to Game of Crimes, brother.
Welcome. Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Man,
good to see you, man.
You as well. It's like old home week. I got to see Sam and his family down here in Orlando, 2 or 3 years ago, I guess it was?
2 years ago, right?
2 years ago, and then we missed you this year. We had a death in our family, and we were out of state for that. But looking forward to seeing you next year when you come down.
Absolutely.
I think we owe you a dinner.
Yeah, I think you do, actually.
There you go.
I'm going to claim that, too.
I tell you what, bean burritos at the 7-Eleven, you can't beat them.
Hey. To each his own, right? We'll drink.
There you go. But this is going to be a great interview here. I mean, I don't even call this an interview. I was telling Sam before we started, this is just more of a conversation between two old friends telling war stories, and you get to hear some of the silliness and some of the serious stuff that we were involved with. And I just want to point out, if you've ever seen the Rambo series, this is not Colonel Sam Trotman we're talking to. Okay, this is DEA Special Agent Sam Trotman.
Right. There's a little slight difference there.
Has anybody ever asked you about that? Are you Sam Trotman?
Absolutely. They wanted to know if I was related.
Tell them, heck yeah. What do you mean related? That was me.
They tried to put me in there. I don't know.
Yeah, that's good stuff, brother. All right, so as we do every week, we're going to get into our small town police blotter. And before we start that, I got to give you this disclaimer. This is a show about crime. We talk about bad people doing bad things. We talk about bad people doing bad things to good people. Now, we take our jobs very seriously in these stories, but we never want to miss the opportunity to have a good laugh at the expense of some of these dumb criminals that are out there. And let me tell you, I was looking for a story out of Jersey to send up to Sam. It took me like 2 seconds. And then the Florida one, I've got articles in reserve. I don't even have to research those anymore. So, Sam, if you would, buddy, tell us about this guy up in New Jersey and what he was up to.
Sure. So it starts out with a man in New Jersey who's part of a crew that arranged to have more than 100 pounds of methamphetamine mailed to him to be sold in New Jersey. Michael Vendetti, 39 of Camden, received the packages containing the meth from March through September 2021. He was subsequently arrested when investigators found 8 pounds of methamphetamine, about $29,000 in cash, scales, and other drug paraphernalia as they searched his house in Camden. The investigators broke up the operation mid-September when they flagged a package being sent from Calexico, California, which is a town on the U.S.-Mexican border, to a location in New Jersey, Blackwood. According to the charging documents, U.S. postal inspectors pulled aside the parcel when it arrived in New Jersey in mid-September and had a K-9 sniff the package. The K-9 alerted to the package. And detectives opened up the package and found methamphetamine. They removed it, placed 8 bundles of sham substance and a small sample of methamphetamine, according to the court papers. The package was then delivered. Law enforcement followed the man, drove the package from Blackwood to an apartment in the 300 block of Mount Ephraim Avenue in Camden, where Vendetti was arrested. and then subsequently sentenced to 14 years in federal prison. They seized the $9,000, and he also had received a supervised release of 5 years.
You know what? We've done controlled deliveries. You and I both have in our different offices. I've never heard of somebody mailing themselves 100 pounds of meth.
That's a little excessive. This is very close to a case I did, I think, going back in like 2000. And there was a package being mailed out of San Diego back to Jersey, and we seized 2 pounds of meth, and we were able to track that down and control deliveries and whatnot, and took it all the way back to Tijuana to the cartel. So
I can remember in Atlanta, we were doing controlled deliveries, and it might have been 4 pounds, 8 pounds, 10, maybe 20 pounds at most, but not 100.
100 pounds. A little excessive, I think.
A little ambitious, wasn't he?
Trying to get rich quick, I guess.
And there's one thing you don't know about the game of crimes, Sam, is that our number one rule is kids do not do meth.
Kids do not do meth. Well,
that's it. Words of wisdom from an old father.
There you go.
All right. Thank you, brother, for doing that.
Sir.
Let's talk about the idiot here in Florida. This is from just last month, as a matter of fact. During the first 5 months of this year, a 72-year-old Florida man has placed, now listen to this, 3,400 calls to 911 just in the first 5 months of 2025, pushing his 5-year total to 16,000 calls to the police emergency line. This is according to investigators who arrested the recurring caller for allegedly stalking a neighbor. Police responded to a 911 call claiming that someone was shooting an AR-15 out in the roadway. This is outside of St. Petersburg, over next to Tampa. It seems like the majority of our stupid criminal stories come from that area. When officers arrived at the home, they discovered a family barbecue with small children at play. So I don't think there was a rifle involved. With regard to the reported gunplay, numerous neighbors advised that such an event did not occur. The complainant was Samuel Lee Thomas, who lives across the street from where the shooting purportedly happened. Police communication records show that Thomas this year dialed police 647 times to make complaints about the neighboring home, about this one home, 647 times. He's made allegations about narcotic sales, firearms usage, disorderly conduct, and suspicious activity. Now, Anquinette Peterson, she's 34, who lives at that property, she told the cops that 911 calls had resulted in hundreds of interactions with the police and that Thomas frequently stops in front of the resident and yells obscenities at her and her family. It sounds like he just needs to be punched in the mouth. Anyway, concluding that it was readily apparent that Thomas was utilizing the police to maliciously harass Peterson and her family for no legitimate purpose, cops busted Thomas for stalking and false reports of a crime. He is also charged with resisting arrest. He's 72 years old. Hey, he still got it. For allegedly tussling with the officers when they tried to handcuff him. Peterson said she wanted to press charges against Thomas because she was fearful that the constant police calls could escalate into potential dangerous situation, adding that her family had already suffered severe emotional distress. And you got little kids there, man. I can see that.
Absolutely. Well, did this guy ever go to sleep?
Apparently, he's too busy. He just wanted to be one of the teenagers. He's sitting like this. Got his thumbs going, right? Anyway, Thomas's telephonic proclivities, they got to quit using these big words in these articles. Thomas's telephonic proclivities extended beyond Peterson's household. According to a criminal complaint, Thomas had made approximately 3,400 calls to the police this year and 16,000 calls within the last 5 years. The complaint does not detail the nature or target of those additional 911 calls, but indicates that with regard to Thomas, there was no indication of mental health issues or drug or alcohol influence. Now, he's out on a $1,500 bond. He pleaded not guilty to 3 misdemeanor charges. His rap sheet includes multiple battery convictions. Man, I guess the guy just likes to fight, as well as convictions for DUI, pot possession, disorderly intoxication, passing bad checks, violating probation, and failure to return rented merchandise. He has not previously been busted for misusing the 911 system. And in a brief phone conversation, he said, "I don't know anything about stalking," adding that his calls to police were about neighborhood nuisances. And he let it be known that he was former military. Damn, 16,000 calls?
That's what I'm saying. He was probably taking all that meth so he could stay awake and make all those calls.
You'd have to. My whole life, even at my age, I don't think I've made a total of 16,000 calls in my whole life.
Right. A little excessive.
The things that people do out here.
One of the upstanding citizens of Tampa, right?
Yeah. I don't know what it is about that place over there. Pete is one of the prettiest places you can go to in Florida and probably been throughout the Southeast, but just so many of the stories come out of there.
That's
I don't know what's in the water, what's going on over there. It's just a magnet for wackos, I guess. Anyway, if you're wondering how Sam and I met here, I think it was 1991. Does that sound right? I think that's when
1991, early 1992, somewhere in there. Yeah, absolutely.
So I was stationed in Bogota, Colombia, and Sam, you were a relatively new agent stationed in New York City, right?
That's correct. Yep.
You came on the job in 1990. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But there was a case that we're going to talk about, how Sam and I met, as well as you met Javier and Gary Sheridan we had a 3-guy team back then before Gary got promoted and transferred. But the case centered around a guy named Danny Munoz Mosquera, which we call La Quica. That's his street name. Who, if you remember, there was an Avianca flight that was bombed back in 1989, I think it was. And he was responsible for putting that bomb on the flight. So we'll talk a little bit more. But through our interactions with DEA offices in Los Angeles, Boston, and New York, the case ended up in Sam's lap as you were a cop before, but just almost still a rookie with DEA, and you got this major case,
very much
international terrorism case.
Correct. Yeah.
Wow. So anyway, that's how we met up, and like you've heard me talk about before, man. Once you become friends in law enforcement, you're friends for life. That's the brotherhood and sisterhood with the inside the blue. So Sam, if you would, and I'll stop talking here, so I'll let you talk a little bit. Tell us a little bit about where you're from, where you grew up, what your family dynamics were, brothers and sisters, anybody in law enforcement, that kind of thing.
I grew up in a small town in South Jersey, Haddonfield. It's a very wealthy town. Where I grew up, it's where my kids went to school, I went to school, my dad went to school, but it's not that kind of a relationship in the sense of everybody's from that town, they stay in that town. But the town is like a very wealthy town. It's very well known throughout the state of New Jersey, maybe even outside of the states, of a well-to-do town. I have 2 brothers, a sister, and we all went through the school system there. When I got started in law enforcement in like 1985, New Jersey had an alternate method of being hired, where you would turn around and pay for your own police academy.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I wanted to do. Paid for my own education for the academy, which required the books, the academy itself, the ammo, and everything to get through the academy. That was in 1984, end of 84.
Mm-hmm.
And then by the time we graduated, the head prosecutor for the Camden County Prosecutor's Office approached me and asked me if I had a job offer yet. I told him no, and he said he wanted to hire me. So I started my career with the Camden County Prosecutor's Office.
Did anybody in your family, were they in law enforcement?
No, I had some cousins that were in law enforcement, but they were down in North Carolina. But they didn't stay long in it.
What did mom and dad do?
My dad was a teacher. My mom was a housewife.
Very good. Where did the interest to get in law enforcement come from?
No, I really don't know. It's just something I always wanted to do. I put my mind to it and did it.
Did you ever think that, well, if I don't become a cop, I might become a bad guy?
No, but I did a lot of bad things.
Didn't we both? Just by the grace of God.
Yeah.
The grace of God, we'd go to prison, right?
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, if you do some of the stuff that we did now, you'd be in prison.
I know it, man. And when you were in high school, did you play any sports?
I did. Played baseball. That was my main sport.
What position?
Pitcher.
Nice.
Played pretty much anywhere but catcher. I wasn't getting behind the plate. That wasn't my gig.
Yeah.
But I played pretty much all the other positions. Got injured my last 2 years in high school and was unable to fulfill out that. So took off a year after high school and didn't want to go to college, didn't know what I was doing, and so kind of worked a little bit. And then I turned around and went to Camden County College for 2 years, played baseball there for a couple of years, and got involved with the fire department. And that seemed to be more exciting than playing baseball. So I stopped playing baseball and spent my time working in horsing around in the fire department with a lot of beers.
I might make fun of firemen on here.
That's all right.
Because they're busting our chops.
Yeah, both of them. I was a fireman and police, so I take both sides of it.
You can't win either way.
I absolutely will not win.
Oh, man. That's good stuff. Now, the reason the prosecutor came to you, what was that reason? Why did he pick you out of all the people in your class?
I wound up graduating number 1 in the academy, and that was a combination of academics and shooting and physical activities. So I came out number 1, and it's, again, the alternate method. A lot of the departments, they want to spend money to send somebody to the academy. So if you're already trained and have that PTC certification that New Jersey requires, then you're a candidate. And I said, coming out number 1, he found out about that and approached me and said he wanted to hire me. So
excellent.
That led off my career.
And you stayed there for how long?
I was in there for 5 years.
Now, what does a prosecutor's investigator do? Just explain for our listeners what that involves.
You're basically a county detective. I started out in the grand jury unit, so that's gathering all the documentation from local departments, presenting it into a package for a prosecutor to present evidence to the grand jury and get an indictment. So I did that for roughly about 6 months. Then they transferred me over to the fugitive unit. I was tracking down fugitives. People didn't show up for court and whatnot, which leads to me a good story on that one.
Okay, we got to hear it now. You brought it up.
Okay.
You got to tell us.
Right. So my partner and I, we went to the academy together, and so happens that we were both in the car in the fugitive unit together, and we were out doing our normal business and came over the radio from the county dispatch that the state police had an all-points bulletin put out looking for a fugitive, Joanne Chesmar. I don't know if you ever heard that name before.
It sounds familiar.
Was part of the Black Liberation Army. She killed a Jersey trooper and then ended up being sentenced to life and ultimately escaped from jail. And it's been on the run ever since. And that goes back to, I think, somewhere around 77, 78, somewhere in there.
Is she supposedly hiding out in Cuba?
Supposed to be hiding out in Cuba. That's where, and then under a different name. And, of course, there's no extradition between Cuba and the United States. So she's hiding out. And whether they know where she's at right now, I don't know. So anyhow, this bulletin gets put out by the state police. And they describe a vehicle, black woman driving, fitting the description of Joanne Chesmar and driving down the road. And he couldn't make a U-turn to catch up to it, but had plates. So when we get the all-points bulletin come out, I told my partner, I said, I know where she's going. Let's go. So we cut her off and we catch up to her. And of course, we radio on her that we have her in sight. And of course, everybody's telling us on the radio, do not apprehend. She's dangerous, armed, and so forth. And just continue to maintain surveillance on her. So we do this for a period of time. And so she goes into a CVS store. And we're like, why is she going to a CVS store? That makes no sense. Like, if you're this terrorist, this doesn't make any sense. But anyhow, so we stay on her and we follow her to another store. And by the time we get there is troopers from all over New Jersey.
I'll bet.
Lights and siren. I mean, they are coming out of the woodwork. So we have the county, the state, local municipalities. I've never seen so many police cars in my life once we get to this location. And so my partner and I were all slapping high five. Like we caught Joanne Chesmar. We got her. And it turned out it was some other lady. But we did our job. We found the car that was from the all-points bulletin. We tracked her and did our surveillance, called on all the troops in. But it was just a mistaken identity. And lo and behold, we turned out and beat feet.
And you know what? In law enforcement culture, it doesn't matter. You're still at fault.
We'll be at fault to some degree, but we did our job. And that job was, we answered the radio. We found where she was at, followed her, called in for help, and let the other people handle it. But
that's your story. You're sticking to it.
That's exactly how it went down.
I love it. Well, I mean, you're still a rookie at that point, right?
Yeah, I'm only about a year and a half on the street.
And that happens even with stolen cars. They'll put out a bolo on a stolen car, and this was, back in the mid '70s when I was a uniform cop. They don't give you the tag number sometimes. All you have is a color and a make and a model, and they'll tell you it's a male or a female as a suspect, and you see a car matching it, and you hate to walk up to some poor unsuspecting lady with your gun out, but you don't know what you got.
Do what you got to do.
There you go. You don't want to traumatize, especially if there's kids in the car. You just got to be careful with that kind of stuff. Did you go to college?
I did. Went to Camden County for 2 years, and then
Right.
to Glassboro for the final two. Glassboro State, and it's now called Rowan University. So,
and what'd you major in?
Law enforcement.
There you go. Me too. Yeah. And you don't know how you got the law enforcement bug?
No, it's something that was always in me since I was young. So, yeah. And then what brought me to DEA was after I got in the fugitive unit, then went over to career criminal and worked there for about a month or two. And that was basically just to learn the ropes of interviewing techniques and so forth, how to get criminals to confess to crimes. And so we did that for a couple months. And then I remember my captain asked me, I'm going to send you to the narcotic unit. And I'm like, I don't want to go to narcotics. I want to go over to the arson unit. He goes, well, we're not sending anybody to the arson unit. So the narcotics stay where you're at. And so I said, well, all right, well, kick myself in the ass. But I stayed, and then he turned around, and next thing I know, I got sent to child abuse and sex crimes.
Oh
Lord, what a bad move that was.
Oh yeah.
I did one case there, and went back up to my captain and told him, I said, listen, either you transfer me out of here, I don't care, I'll go back to the grand jury unit, or you're going to wind up locking me up. Because we did one case with a guy that we arrested and got him to confess. He was raping his 3 nephews, one each night. Had been doing that for like a year or 2 years. It was crazy. And it was all I could do to stay on this side of the table. But we got the confession out of him, and that worked out. But it wasn't long after that, the captain transferred me over to the narcotic unit, called me upstairs and said, listen, I asked you before to go. And I said, well, send me now. I'm ready to go.
I'm sorry, I'll go.
Yeah. So I went there, and I had a good stint there, learned a lot. And then the DEA was doing a wiretap case, and they asked for assistance. So I got sent over to DEA for a period of anywhere from 3 to 6 months for a wiretap investigation. And I liked what I was doing there and talked to the agents. Next thing I know, I'm applying, and
the rest is history.
September 1990, I started.
Yeah. When you mentioned the career criminal unit, can you explain to our listeners what career criminal means? What's that about?
They look to get defendants off the street, ones that have committed major crimes, bank robberies, aggravated assaults, those kind of things, and have multiple stints with law enforcement on that. And they try to get them basically in jail for a long period of time.
Yeah.
And so you go in there and you try to get them to confess to their crimes. Usually it's before they lawyer up and get the lawyers involved. So go ahead and talk to them, kind of smooth talk them, side with them, everything. And then once they confess, then it's all done.
Mm-hmm. Good. When you were in the narcotics unit, did you ever have to work undercover?
I did. Yeah.
What was your role? Who did you portray?
Well, when I was at the county, I portrayed myself as a medical student.
Oh, very good.
So, yeah, it worked out really well because I knew just enough to say enough in the medical field because I was an EMT.
Mm-hmm.
So I can talk a little bit and talk enough to get around most people that don't know anything about medical. So it sounded like I was a first year med student, and that was my undercover role.
Were you buying or selling?
Buying.
Okay. And what was the drug back then? Mostly
marijuana, some coke, and a little bit of meth.
Did you get the grungy, scrubby look?
No, I didn't have to. I was a med student. You got to stay clean.
So I wasn't smart enough to come up with a role like that.
But it worked,
Oh, yeah, man. When I went to Miami in the early 90s, we all thought we were Don Johnson, so you had to have long hair.
Yeah. Well, I had longer hair than I have now. It was enough that I guess after the academy, DEA academy, I could almost put it into a ponytail.
Yeah. I did that. The only person that ever saw me in a ponytail was my wife. When I was working around the house, I hated it. It was long, it was hot, and I'd put it in a ponytail in the home, and then I said, no, you can't tell anybody else I'm doing this. I just wasn't into that crap.
As long as you weren't wearing that French outfit.
Well, I'm not saying anything. It's you're married. We were married. It's okay.
It's all right. Hey.
Well, we took turns. You don't know.
I don't need to know.
TMI, right?
That's that.
So when you go to the DEA Academy, was that in September of 90 or was it earlier in the year?
That was September 1990.
Okay. And what was your BA number, your class number?
That was 73.
Okay. And for our listeners, each class has a basic agent class number. Mine was 53 and I went through in 87. So we weren't that far apart. Did you go through the FBI Academy there?
Yeah, the DEA didn't have their academy built. In fact, they were still in negotiations.
Mm-hmm.
Don't even think that was even thought of at the time.
Yeah.
Or at least I'd never heard of it. We were still over at the FBI Academy, and we had a couple floors that were assigned to us for housing for DEA, so we were right alongside the FBI.
Do you remember what floor you were assigned to back then?
I want to say it was the third or fourth floor.
Yeah, we were on the fifth floor, and our counselors, probably our class coordinator, wouldn't let us use the elevator for the first, I don't know, however many weeks. Right. At least for that first 5 weeks when you couldn't leave. You stay there on the weekends and all that. Just to get everybody into shape.
Yeah, I'd say it worked. We had to use the steps. That's why I said I think it was either the third or fourth floor. I think it was the third floor because it wasn't too bad.
Yeah. You know what? It worked. I mean, get your legs in great shape, right?
You can do some huffing and puffing going up down the steps, though.
Darn right, man. When you finish lunch, you want to go to your room and clean up because you've either been on the range or you've been out on PT in the morning. And I was there June through September, so it was hot. Every day was freaking hot. But you got to run those steps. Yeah. Then you really sweat by the time you get up there, and you just had lunch, and then the time you get back to the classroom, you just want to put your head on your desk and take a little nap. But they didn't think too kindly of that, did they?
No, they sure didn't.
So our regular listeners here know that DEA guys always have funny stories that come from the academy. Do you remember, and don't name any names, but any names or any stories about yourself or somebody else in your class?
There was a couple. I can recall several of them, but one that kind of I remember very distinctly was we were out on the range, and our range of 10 to 15 agents to a bay. 4 bays, so I guess maybe more than that. Maybe I think we had like 50 people in our class. Mm-hmm. And I'm a good shot. I'm just not going to tell you anything. I'm a good shot. I'm sitting there on the bay, and I've been shooting with the Glock, and I'm shooting in the upper 90s. My bay instructor, he comes out and goes, you're a former law enforcement, you're shooting. He says, you're good. So then we get introduced to the Colt SMG.
Machine gun.
Yeah, DEA weapon back in the 90s. And they handed it to me and said, all right, so they're showing the targets up there, and there's like a total of like 6 circles, numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And they say, all right, well, we want you to hit the circle on the right. So I aim in on the right, and my bullet's going to the left. It's like, So I did shoot the target. I'm second guessing myself. So they said, all right, fire another round. So I fired another round, aim into the target circle on the right, and it's hitting the one on the left. I keep going on, and when this just goes on for several minutes, it just goes on. My bay instructor comes up and goes, "What target are you shooting at?" I go, "I'm aiming on the one on the right, but my rounds are going to the left." I said, "The sights are off." I said, "It's not me, it's the sights." And he goes, "Yeah." I says, "I can imagine." He says, "Because you've been shooting your ass off." He says, "You don't need to explain anymore." So I'm keep on going. Then all of a sudden, one of the other firearms instructors comes down, and he starts giving me a hard time. He's screaming and yelling, the typical academy stuff, right? Pulls me off the line, pulls me into the center of the 2 bays. He says, "You see that piece of paper on the berm there?" I said, "Yep." He goes, "I want you to hit that piece of paper." So I aim in, and the round goes to the left. "I told you to hit that piece of paper." And continue back and forth. So finally he says, "Give me that weapon." So I hand him the weapon. He fires a round, goes to the left. So he fires another round, aiming the piece of paper. He goes, "This is where you hit the piece of paper." So he aims at the paper, and it goes to the left. So I tap him on the shoulder. I go, "That's where my rounds are going." He got so pissed off at me, took the gun and threw it at me. I mean, like one of these kind of like, "Here, I'd catch them." He goes, "Get back in line." The bay instructor comes back up. He goes, "Rounds are all going to the left." He says, "The sights are obviously off." He said, "The firearms instructor can't hit the piece of paper. He can't hit it." He says, "And you can't hit it. So guess what? The sights are off." So it's kind of comical that, how people act when they're put in a position of authority.
Yes.
You just can't take the word for somebody else. It's it all kind of thing. And
I
just sit back and laugh at it. It just became comical.
Why didn't somebody go get a screwdriver and adjust your sights?
You wonder?
Yeah.
Great question. But after, I couldn't do it, and then the instructor couldn't do it, I think it would have just said, hey, let's pull this weapon off the line and give me a different weapon or make the adjustments. But
unbelievable.
That's how that went. So
Yeah.
Kind of a comical story about how you're in the academy. You have to be all proper and everything and listen to all the BS that they give you.
Yeah.
Screaming and yelling and whatnot.
Do you remember when we were in the academy, they would have 5 classes in there at the same time, 5 DEA classes.
Yeah.
And I think there was 4 or 5 bureau classes. There's a national academy going on there,
right.
State and locals. It was packed.
Yeah, there was several hundred people down there.
As a new class would come in, if 54 came in, they would 2 people from 53 to go in and address them. And it's their first week, and they could ask any questions, and no instructors in the room. And they said they turned the cameras off. We don't know if they did or not. Turn the microphones off and all that stuff. And I was one of the 2 that was selected to go in and talk to class 54. And some of the questions were good questions, but there was one lady on the front row that you could tell she probably was not going to pass the PT. And that was her question. If I don't pass the PT, what's going to happen? A day after that first PT test, she was gone.
Gone. See you later.
Yep. Yeah. But I was also a firearms instructor for DEA there for a number of years too. And you get to go up to the academy and teach. Man, I would never treat the bats like the basic agent trainees like that. They're there to learn.
Well, you're supposed to teach them. You're supposed to make them learn. And if there's something wrong, then,
fix it.
But
so tell us about your choices about where you wanted to be stationed.
Oh yeah, that's a good story too. So you had to pick out three different locations or 3 spots that you wanted to be at. So I picked Philadelphia, Raleigh, North Carolina, and I think it was Miami. Were my 3 selections.
Mm-hmm.
And so we go in there. They pull us off the firearms and had to run down to the room. And there was a panel of 3 or 4 guys there, and they call your name in, you come inside, sit down, and they said, all right, so these are your choices. So we got good news and bad news. What do you want first? I turned around. I was like smart ass. I said, I don't care. I'm going to get here on both of them anyway. So just pick one and let's go forward. He goes, well, you got good news is, all right. So the bad news is you didn't get any of your 3. Good news is you're staying on the East Coast. Jeez. Welcome to New York. So I kind of figured that because they said there's going to be a big push for our class to go to New York.
Oh, really?
We had 50 in our class, if I remember correctly. I think 15 of us went to New York.
Wow.
So that's a pretty good chunk of people going out of there. So I'm pretty sure it was 15. I know it was quite a lot.
Jeez. So how far away is New York from where you grew up? It's not that far away, right?
It's about 85 miles, 85, 90 miles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you move into New York or?
No.
You commuted?
No, I commuted back and forth 8 hours there, 1.5 hours up, 1.5 hours back, 2 hours overtime, 15, 16-hour days. And by the time I got home, it was kiss the wife goodnight and start the next day.
You were married during all this time?
Yes, I was married. Yep. And in fact, I just had a baby in January.
Wow.
So I got out of the academy in December, had a baby in January, and reported to New York in February, all in 1991.
And would she have entertained the idea of moving closer to New York or no?
I think she would have. But the way I looked at it was, it's an 1.5 hour commute. It's about 85 miles, up down the turnpike. And I know guys that were working in New York, living in New York, that were maybe 15, 20 miles away, and it would take them an hour and 15 minutes to get in. And I looked at it, well, why am I going to uproot my family to do a commute that, I got to be in the mileage of only, being 20, 30, 40 miles away, being a lot shorter distance, but it's still going to take you the same amount of time to get there.
True.
And all the traffic and everything. So it worked out well that I stayed where I was at and did the commute. Got to know the Jersey Troopers pretty well.
On purpose?
Mostly on purpose.
Hey guys, if you see this car.
Yeah, if you see this car, they all knew my car. Yes, they did. In fact, I played baseball against one of them. He went to Haddon Township High School, and I went to Haddonfield, and we played baseball against each other, but we knew each other.
Oh, how about that? How many bottles of alcohol did that cost you? Or did it?
I didn't have to do any alcohol on that.
As a gift, hey.
It's It's out of just due respect to each other.
Yeah.
And I knew I was speeding, but they knew I had a job to get to, and they just kind of make sure you stay safe. And there was times where they would have a car stop, and I come down the road and there's nobody around, and so I'd pull over and just behind them and just back them up, make sure they were okay. And so it's, looking out for each other. And
that's the way it should be. Yeah. And I got to say, man, you go to the Northeast and it's still the old school type attitude towards brother and sister officers. Once they find out who you are, they bend over backwards for you.
Right.
And that's the way it used to be. It's just not like that everywhere anymore.
No, that's for sure.
And for our listeners, I'm not justifying cops breaking the law by speeding or, traffic violations. And certainly not felonies. You've heard me say it 100 times, and I'll continue to say it. Nobody hates a bad cop more than a good cop.
Absolutely.
Professional courtesy is very much appreciated when you're willing to put your life on the line for somebody else. That's a little pep talk there.
Yeah. Sometimes you need that.
So you get to New York, and what enforcement group are you assigned to?
This is where it gets a little on the tricky side. Back when I was in the academy, we heard stories about this group, Group 33.
Yeah, everybody.
And there was a lot of OPR investigations under that group, and they were known, as I knew them, they were known as the Cowboys. They were running and gunning, locking people up, taking drugs off the street, maybe not doing the most or the best paperwork, the neatest paperwork. So sometimes the cases didn't make it to court. Sometimes guys pled out, some guys didn't, and the cases were dismissed. But there was a bunch of things that were accusations that were going on innuendos with that Group 33, and they broke up the group. So some guys got transferred out of that group to other groups, and then they renamed that group Group 32 because it had a very distinct bad stigma associated with it. So got to Group 32, formerly known as 33, and that's where my career started in New York. And then remember, there's always that a little bit of a clique. When we start getting into certain groups and they work tight, and they go out and hustling and doing kind of work that they're supposed to be doing. I remember back in, I guess it was like March or April of that year, 1991, there was a buy bus set up, and me being fresh out of the academy, I was a runner. The bus went down, and I bailed out of the car, and I went running down the street, and our backup was running. He gets out of the car, and I caught up to him. So he was already ahead of me, like half a block or so, and I caught up to him. I remember looking over at him and telling him, "Come on, you short-legged old man, let's go." And I just took off and wound up catching the guy up the street a little further up, and dove and caught him and cuffed him up. And with that, some of those guys were in 33, so they know. So they went back and told the other guys what had happened. And I remember that night afterwards, went down to the bar and had a couple of beers, and I got kind of like deputized or sworn in as, this guy's all right, he can handle himself. And
you're accepted.
You've been accepted into New York and into the group. So
nice.
So that worked out really, really good.
I don't know if you saw this throughout your transfers, but when you'd go to a new office as a working agent, not as a supervisor, you almost felt an obligation to pay your dues again every time you went to a new office. Did you feel like that?
I don't think that I did, because when I left New York, I went to the Camden office, and then I knew all the agents there from before, but I went with another agent up to Trenton, and we did a buy bus up and hit a bar up in Trenton. And, Trenton's probably about as bad as Camden, or if not worse. Wow. And I know the Camden detectives were up there, and I didn't know it at the time because the agent told me, but they said that, you handled yourself very well inside that bar. So, get into the bar, and guys are going to the ground, and we're patting them down because there was guns, drugs, money, all kinds of stuff going out of this bar when everybody was affiliated with it. So I did what I had to do, and it came back. I guess the lieutenant went back to the agent and told him, "You can bring this guy along anytime you want."
Nice.
So got accepted by the Trenton PD guys.
I know some of our listeners, if you're not in military or first responder agencies, you might not understand the significance of that, because that just means that you've now been accepted by your peers. For me, that's what you wanted. Exactly. You're dealing with studs and studettes that know how to do the job, that have done the job, that are risking their lives, that are out there fighting, saving people in dangerous situations. And when they say, "Hey, anytime, come back anytime," that's just like a little badge of honor.
That's a badge of honor and a little pat on the back.
Yeah. It makes you feel good. It was, as you were talking about that, I was in North Carolina at the time, and we were over in Mount Airy, which is like Mayberry. That's the show. Mayberry was patterned on Mount Airy, North Carolina, and got some great cops over in the city and the county. Just really got along with them real well, state. And we were taking this crack dealer down one time, and we go in, and I was driving an old Volvo back then for an undercover car. And so, nobody ever looks at the Volvo as a police car. And so when we were doing the raid, we had search warrants and arrest warrants and all that. We come in. Well, to lock the doors on the Volvo, you actually had to put the key in the outdoor lock and twist it. So everybody's out of the car running, and they're coming in from other cars, and I'm, lagging behind because I've got to lock the car. And we were in the hood, so, you didn't want to leave your car unlocked. So I get in there, and now they've already been in there. Everything's under control, and I get in there. But the main defendant, this young fellow who kilos and kilos of crack, he's slinging that crap every day, is in there just berating the local cops, and they haven't cuffed him or anything, and they're just standing there taking it. I'm like, is this the guy we're here to get? And they said, yep, and did what you had to do and took him right down and cuffed him up. And the locals are like, did you see that? A Fed just did that. A Fed just did that. Well, I was a real cop before I was a Fed. So,
right.
But then you kind of get up, and not that you're any better, you're certainly not any better than them, and you're really not there to tell them what to do. But I chastised them a little bit, like, you're in charge here. You take control of the situation.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. Believe it or not, just by showing that you're willing to get in the mix, it earns you a reputation that just.
And it goes a long way after that.
It really does. And people don't forget it. And it spreads. The word spreads out. So it sounds like we're beating people up when I talk about stuff like that. We're laughing about it.
No, we weren't beating them up. You're taking control of the situation.
Doing our job.
You're doing your job. You're putting somebody in cuffs. You're taking them to the ground and
yep.
doing it safely.
If a guy's not cuffed up, he's not restrained, you're in his territory. You don't know where he has weapons. He has the gun under the couch right there next to you. Is there a knife laying around somewhere? You just got to control that situation for everybody's safety. So in 1991, I think it was, you get this call from, how did you find out about the Quica case?
Yeah.
I'm going to guess your GS came and signed it to you.
Yeah, well, what happened was we got word from Colombia that they had been tracking this guy, Danny Munoz Mascara, also known as Quica, that he had escaped from several prisons down in Colombia. He was part of the Medellin Cartel, that he had gone up to California, so it's made his way all through Latin America, up into California, and then made his way to Boston. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think wasn't there wiretaps going on at the time, and
on his
Colombia,
family.
Okay. So they were tracking in that, and then trying to put the pieces together. And so they knew that he was in Boston. Remember, the Boston agents were out looking for him, trying to find the phone where he was utilizing. He was moving around, and then they got word that he was down in Queens, New York. So we were out, doing surveillance out there, and I think it was a Friday or over the weekend. I was off, and got word that we had arrested him. Came back in the next day in, and the supervisor just told me, he says, I need you to do this, this, and this, and got assigned working the case.
And have you got a year in the New York office yet?
No, that was September 1991. I got to New York in February. March, April, we did the buy bust, and then I was asked to do an undercover in May 1991. We can talk about that later, but I did that, and then September is when Mascara's arrested.
Not that you don't have experience, because you had 5 years on with the prosecutor's office.
Correct.
Before coming to DEA, but that's not a lot of time on DEA to be given a case of that significance.
No,
because not only was he working for Pablo Escobar, he was one of Pablo's main sicarios.
Correct.
I mean, this guy, he's a sicko. I think he was 26 years old when you guys arrested him.
Yeah, I don't remember how old he was. I just remember getting him fingerprinted and being there when we arrested him for the bombing of the plane and the indictment later on that came. And you could just look into the guy's eyes, and there was nothing there. You could look. I mean, it was just black. There was nothing there. You just look right into the soul, and it's like looking into the devil. It was bad. Gave me the chills. Actually, I got the chills. When I was fingerprinting, I was like, "This guy's a bad dude."
Yeah, I was doing a little more research before you and I got together today, and came across one statement that he committed his first murder at 12 years old.
Yeah, I remember something about that. Yep.
Oh my gosh! And I think was suspected in killing more than 50 cops. I think it was.
There was a bunch of cops where they were bombing the Kais, which are little tiny substations.
Yep.
Killed the cops, bombing their cars. The Kais killed not only the police officer, they were killing the judges and politicians. They were going after them, and there was just.
I think he was involved in the assassination of Luis Carlos Galan, who was the leading presidential candidate down there.
Well, that's all part of the Medellin Cartel that did that.
Yeah. And you can go back. I presume that the video is still on YouTube, but you can actually watch the video of Galan going up on stage for a rally on a Friday night. And I think this was in 89 also. That 89 was a really bad year for Colombia with Escobar. And they come and machine gun him right there on the stage, and they get him to the hospital, but I think he was probably dead before he got to the hospital. And that guy's approval rating was over 90%. And his you know this, but for our listeners, his platform was pro-extradition. He wanted the Narcos extradited to the United States, and that was Pablo's big reason for fighting the government, is he was against extradition.
Correct.
Yeah. So, and I know I'm preaching to the choir when I tell you that, but just so our listeners here.
Yeah, not everybody knows our stories.
Yeah. Yep. So what was he doing in the United States? Because this is one of Pablo's main killers.
That we never really found out because he wasn't talking. We suspected that he was here to do a couple hits. And, there's a lot of coke that was seized that belonged to the Medellin Cartel across the country, Texas, New Orleans, California, New York, Florida. And we suspect that he was here to handle some business for Pablo.
And I think later we found out that the following week after his arrest at the United Nations, when the U.S. president, I think it was first Bush, was going to be at the United Nations to speak.
Right. Yep.
And the president of Colombia after Galan was killed was Cesar Gaviria, and Gaviria was going to speak at the United Nations. And so I think it was a lot of presumption on everybody's part. I don't know that there was any direct evidence to prove any of this, but the thought was that he was probably there to try to kill the president of Colombia.
Again, we never did find out what the reason was here, but there was a lot of speculation based on him being here, who he was, and what was going on at the time.
Wow. It's scary to think that, I'm sure it happens regularly, but somebody of that caliber, a Sicario at that caliber, who was responsible for putting the bomb or orchestrating the bomb to be put on the Avianca flight that killed 107 people plus 3 people on the ground.
There was he was involved, and to what degree we've gotten mixed stories on, but he was definitely involved with the transportation or security of getting that device onto the plane, getting from point A, which I guess that probably came out of Medellin to Bogota and then to the airport. But there's more than one person that's involved with that. And the orders came down from Pablo, and his other hitmen were involved. And so there was a number of people that were definitely involved with that. And
to this day, Quica has never talked as.
No, he has not. Nope. Denies everything, but he denies that he killed police officers, and he denies the bombing. He's denied everything. But I know when we arrested him, he did make a statement saying, something along the lines that God knows what I did or something like that. And
that was because he had a brother,
Tyson.
Yeah. Brancy, I think was his name. His street name was Tyson. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
And they supposedly carried Bibles when they committed murders, and then they would pray over the dead person. That's a little crazy.
Well, that's a little wacky. Just a little bit.
That's a lot wacky, isn't it? But these are the kind of people you're dealing with down there. How did he, based on the evidence, because you were the lead investigator, you sat at the trial. And before I get to that, tell us, when he was arrested, what was he charged with initially?
He was charged with lying to a federal agent. So when they approached him,
isn't that funny?
Well, it actually came up fairly recent in another case with the federal government. I don't remember what agency, but they charged him for lying to a federal agent about his name.
Yeah,
and I remember seeing it on the news and said, "Oh, that's what we did back in 1991."
Yeah, hell, everybody lies to us.
So it was lying to a federal agent. They went up, approached him, what's your name? And he gave some fake name. And we knew who he was because of the wiretaps and everything matched up and description and everything, the photographs. So we knew who he was. They charged him for lying to a federal agent. It's a misdemeanor charge. Usually it's anywhere from 0 to 6 months. So then when he gets charged, we go to trial, and we went up several witnesses from Colombia. The CMPs, several guys came up. I remember, I think it was a major and a captain that came up.
Mm-hmm.
Javier came up. Did you come up for that trial?
I did.
Yeah. Okay. And after he was found guilty, we had an sentencing hearing. So they went up doing what's called a FATICO hearing, where the government puts on evidence to show the activity of the defendant and tried to up the amount of time that he can be faced with. So we put on a hearing, had the officials from Colombia testify, and the judge ruled that, based on his actions down in Colombia and who this guy was, he sentenced him to 6 years. So
for lying to a federal agent.
Law enforcement won that one. So lying to a federal agent, you got 6 years. But in the meantime, supervisor had already assigned me to a narcotic historical case on this guy.
Mm-hmm.
And so from the time that he assigned that to me till the time we went to trial, worked that case for about 3 years, just doing a historical conspiracy case, searching out the witnesses, locating evidence from across the country, looking at, talking to other agents, looking at ledgers and trying to put names together. And that's ultimately what turned out to be a RICO case, a CCE case. And then came up with a couple other witnesses that were able to testify about the bombing of Avianca. And he was, in meetings when those meetings were held. And we got the evidence on that, which corroborated what our witnesses were saying from the FBI. And one thing led to another, and we went up charging them for territorial murders, extraterritorial murders. It's a charge where you kill United States citizens overseas. Mm-hmm. The United States government can bring charges against those people. And then the terrorism for bombing the plane.
And there were 2 Americans on that flight, right?
Yeah, there were 2 Americans on that flight.
And you mentioned RICO and CCE. Can you just tell us quickly what that is? Those are?
Racketeering is the RICO, and continuing criminal enterprise is the CCE.
And both of those can carry up to...
was that 20 to life, I think?
Yep.
20 to life for each one of those charges. So it wound up to being, I think it was a 10 or 12 count indictment against him. Mm-hmm. We indicted, or was on the target to be indicted, was Pablo Escobar as well. And getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, but after Pablo escaped from prison down there, because I think that was right about the time when they were getting ready to do something with the extradition.
Yeah.
There's something about the extradition I think was coming up, and I don't know if he was going to be extradited or if there was others, but then he turned around and left his prison. Am I correct on that, or
No, what really happened on that one was he killed Kiko Moncada and Fernando Galeano in the prison, who were 2 of his lieutenants. Kiko was his childhood friend, and he thought they were holding out on him, holding back on the money and not sharing what Pablo thought his share should have been. And they killed him in the prison. And then that's what eventually, when we found out through an informant what happened, and went to the government of Colombia, and we didn't force them, but strongly suggested they do something about it. And that's what led to them going up there and raiding the prison, and Pablo walked out. Right. And one thing you haven't seen now, Javier was able to get some pictures. One of the news photographers that went up there when they were raiding the prison, he says he got up to, he's dead now, but his family was relaying the story to Javier. Javier had done some stuff with some of the Latina news outlets. And so they, as a gift or a favor, they introduced Javier to this guy's family. And they said that their dad, uncle, whatever he was, used to talk about, he said when he got up there, all the media was there, and he thought, well, I want to get something different. So he took it upon himself and went around to the back side of the prison. I don't know how he made his way around there without being stopped, but he did. And lo and behold, he encountered Pablo and some of his sicarios escaping. And so his story is he laid his camera down and raised his hand and said, "Oh, Mr. Escobar, I'm sorry. This is the reason I'm back here. Nobody sent me. I just thought I'd try something different." And he says Escobar told him, "Pick up your camera and take a picture of a dead man." That's what Pablo said about himself. So in exchange, his family granted us authority to use some of the pictures in our, we're still doing our little worldwide speaking tour.
Okay.
And we've got 3 pictures of Pablo and his sicarios leaving the back of the prison. It's pretty wild. It's like the thing just never goes away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember after he'd escaped, my ASAC, Jack Toll, came to me and said, you still have those phone numbers that are affiliated with Escobar? And I said, yeah, I'm still working this stuff. And he goes, all right, well, let's put something together. So we reached out to an informant that was in jail, and we started making phone calls down to some traffickers in Colombia, trying to get messages back to Pablo all the time, trying to get him on the phone so they can track him and triangulate it, which is ultimately what led to his demise. And we started another whole case, and we wound up sending I think it was a 4-engine prop plane. It was huge. And actually that plane knew it belonged to him.
Mm.
Jose Rodriguez Gotcha.
Really?
How about that?
Wow.
That plane was seized by the United States.
So he'd been dead for quite a while.
He'd been dead for a while. And that plane was sold, relabeled, renumbered and everything. And this company owned it. And just by coincidence, I found out that the plane was actually Gotcha's plane.
Wow.
We wound up sending that plane down for a load. And man, I'm bringing back about 13,000 pounds of weed. But that was all trying to triangulate, get phones with our agencies in Colombia to triangulate that and trying to pinpoint where Escobar was at.
Yep. This is, I tell you what, it brings back so many memories talking about this. Yeah, I'm enjoying the nostalgia here. Wouldn't want to go through any of that again, but I mean, what a great way for some young agents to start their careers, right?
It was once in a lifetime. That's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Sam, we've been going for about an hour now, so what I want to do is call a halt to today's episode and bring you back for an episode tomorrow. I want to thank you so much for telling these stories, because I know they've been told a lot. I mean, we're still getting contact about doing additional documentaries on the Escobar story, and it's been done. Gosh, I'd say we've done 12 to 15 documentaries already, but it just shows the interest around the world. So we'll bring you back tomorrow. We'll finish up talking about La Quica and then talk about some other cases that you were involved with. Everybody, thank you so much for continuing to join us here on the Game of Crimes with Murph in the Morning. Certainly hope you'll come back tomorrow, because we'll tell you the rest of the story about La Quica, who was one of Pablo's main sicarios, and we'll get into some more adventures that involve Sam Trotman. Not Colonel Sam Trotman from Rambo, but the real Sam Trotman.
Very good.
Thank you guys very much. God bless. Stay safe. We'll see you tomorrow.